I am going to go ahead on and tell everybody I am a person that engage. I like to ask questions, get feedback as well. So it's definitely going to be an interactive webinar. Do not hesitate to ask questions here. Pick my brain. You all have me for an hour. So don't hesitate to ask questions. If y'all want to stop me, I can go fast sometimes because I do know this stuff. It's my heart. It's my passion. It's where I live in my warehouse most of the time. It's my second home as I'm here today with the safari behind me, as I call it. But this is my ministry. So I love what I do, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I will tell you all of it because I want people to know what they're getting into as well. So we're going to talk about the 5-day dispatch challenge, but this webinar is intro to trucking, talking about dispatching here. So I'm using part of what you will see in the 5-day challenge to talk about the webinar. So here's what our agenda is going to be about today. We're going to talk about dispatcher, the who, what, why, and how, what freight dispatchers get paid, freight dispatcher requirements. We're going to talk about trucking titles and roles. Very important to learn. We're going to talk about equipment types. I'm going to give you all a bonus guide. You'll get that emailed after the webinar. And it should be questions, not homework. I'm not going to give y'all any homework today. But if you join my 5-day dispatch challenge, you will get homework. And again, just starting out talking about the dispatching here. Dispatching is one of the lowest cost, the easiest way to enter the industry. And I recommend it for everyone that wants to get knowledge into the industry. There are dispatching courses out there, very low cost, but it touches on everything. Most of the things that you will do in the industry, whether it's freight broker, whether it's driving a truck or working for a trucking company, owning a trucking company, owning a warehouse, you cannot get around dispatch. There's no way around it. Everyone has to do some sort of dispatching, work with a dispatcher, or learn dispatching. So I just want to let you know, dispatching, low cost, easy level, easy route to entry, and you will learn all parts of the industry. This profession can also provide you with a steady income and other pleasures. Those other pleasures are working from home, flexibility. You can say, I'm only going to dispatch trucks on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Tuesday and Thursday, only on weekends, only in the evenings. Because with the dispatcher, you're booking loads. Loads are posted 24/7. Because one thing about technology, the internet never sleeps. So there's always someone looking for work, and there's always someone posting a load because there's always a driver that got a maintenance issue. It just goes with the territory. So that's one thing I want you all to keep in mind for those that want to work and do this part-time. I started my company working full-time and doing this part-time. So it can be done. You may be a little tired, but anything worth having is worth the sacrifice. So you can become a good logistician who earns constantly. One thing about it, all you have to do as a dispatcher, it doesn't require a whole lot of thought. It does require negotiation and knowledge, but it doesn't require a whole lot of thought. So once you book that load, as long as that driver delivers, you're going to get paid because you're charging a percentage off the top. You're not waiting for your money after fuel, after expenses. You can get your money off the top. With dispatching, the areas that they solve are loading the truck, which is booking a load to get the truck loaded. They make a route for the drivers. They help resolve unloading the truck, helping the driver find a repairman if the truck breaks down, and they can even complete billing and factoring. Now, these are problems that dispatchers solve. You are not required as a dispatcher to do all those tasks. However, if you choose to do those tasks, you can charge more money for those tasks as well. So just keep that in mind. As a dispatcher, your money comes in based on the services that you provide. You could provide the basic service. Hey, I will find you a load. What's your rate? Or you could provide a back office service where you're offering the company to book the loads, make them a route for the week. if they break down, you'll help them find a repairman, and you'll do their billing and factoring. So there's a lot you can do as add-on services to increase what your rate is going to be for your service offerings. And as always, again, I said this earlier, you're going to get your percentage from the gross without leaving your home or office. So I'll give an example. With dispatching, you're booking a load, you're working with a broker or a shipper or a manufacturer. Just say, for instance, if that load that you book for that driver is $1,000, if your fee is 10%, you automatically getting $100 for booking that load for that driver. You're not, like I say, you don't wait after fuel, after maintenance. You have nothing to do with that. Your job is to book the load, give them work, and let them run. Any questions about that so far? If not, we will move on to the next slide. So let's talk about.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, this is Tamika. I'm from Detroit. Just moved back from Georgia. But my question is, I was watching another video trying to get some knowledge on dispatching, and you said, so we get our money off the top, and so we never worry about what their fuel is, or, you know, unless that truck is ours, right?
Correct. Great question. Okay. No, ma'am. That's why I love teaching this, because a lot of times we put a lot of thought into it. And I will tell you all that with certain drivers and certain companies you work with, you're going to hear the sad stories. Trust me. I had to tell a person last night, every time you tell me a sad story, I got a sad story. I just got a $10,000 invoice for a truck, and the driver been in a hotel for 2.5 weeks. So what's your next story? You know, at the end of the day, business is business. You can't help what fuel costs, you can't help what maintenance costs. Your job as a dispatcher is to stay in your lane as booking that load. You can't help them find cheaper fuel. You can for extra added cost. Don't forget that part. Or they can download the app and find their own cheap fuel, you know, but you're not concerned about that as a dispatcher. You're concerned about meeting the goal and booking a load for that truck. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and then let's talk about the dispatcher's salary. So it just depends on what route you want to go. If you want to be a dispatcher that works for a company, again, we have an internal dispatcher on our company that gets a set salary. And then you also have the option of starting your own company as an independent dispatcher. You can also sign on with dispatching companies, because there are a lot of them out there now, that you can become a dispatcher agent for and still have your own book of business of carriers that you book loads for. So there are different ways you could tackle this dispatching. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but those are just some thoughts. Do I want to work for a company as a dispatcher? Do I want to be independent as a dispatcher, or do I want to create my own company independently as a dispatching company? But the salaries of truck dispatchers in the U.S. range from anywhere from $10,000 to $236,000 a year. This data, I got it from data from 2021 or 2020 of what dispatchers was doing. So the middle 57% of trucking dispatchers make between $42,000 to $107,000 a year, with the top 86% making $236,000 a year. I can tell you there are dispatching companies out there, some I mentor and coach, that are definitely doing $200,000 or better in dispatching, and they have dispatching agents, but that's full-time aggressive. The low end, the 10,000, 20,000, you're doing it as passive income. You may have 1 or 2 trucks you book for something to that nature. But I can definitely tell you, you can't the money adds up quick. If you have a great carrier that is looking for work and willing to work, and they are over the road, even some local within your state, the money adds up very quick. I'll give you all an example. We have some carriers, because we broker. When we don't have loads to broker, we dispatch for them, and we charge them 10%. Well, they're on intermodal, some loads we booked for them maybe around, I think the other week were around 2,800. So every load that we booked around 2,800, the company made $280 because we charged 10%. So I saw an invoice go across to a company for over $700 last week. And I think that was only like it was 4 loads for 4 days. So you all do the math and see how that added up real quick there with being a dispatcher. And again, we weren't responsible for insurance. We were not responsible for the maintenance, the fuel. All we did was book the load. They received their rate con. They picked up, they delivered. We received confirmation they delivered. We sent them their next load. That's what we did as a dispatcher. Any questions about that? In the salary and the pay? And
No.
And in this industry, I want you all to keep in mind, you control your destiny with a dispatcher. You control how big or how small you want it to be.
So I have a question about that. So is your standard rate for dispatching, is it 10% or is that the minimum baseline?
I will say, I think different areas, which we're going to talk about later, have different rates. Before COVID, dispatchers were charging 5%. That was pretty much standard before COVID. But as we all know, everything went up with after COVID. So the standard I have been seeing is more of 10%, but I do know some companies are paying 13%, and there are some companies paying 8% and 5%. Honestly, I tell people, set your rate, be fair, but set your rate, and your rate is your rate.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, I have one. So you said, as far as getting paid, what does that look like? Is that a net 30? Is that a every 2-week thing? And who actually, is it the drivers that pay us, or how does that work?
So it's definitely the drivers that pay you. Great question. You set your terms. The standard is 7 to 10 days after invoicing, because drivers, most of the time, are carriers. They're using a factoring company. If you all are familiar with factoring company, those are companies that buy your loads, pay you within 1 to 2 days, and they wait on the money to come back to them. So most drivers are getting the money from that load within 1 to 2 days after they deliver. We do, and most people do, weekly invoicing, where they may invoice the driver every Friday or every Monday. You want to keep up with it week by week. You don't want to let it go too long. And like I say, it's up to you. I've seen dispatching companies say net zero. When I send you this invoice, my money is due same day. So that would be something as part of your business process and planning on how soon you expect your money. Again, too, one thing I want you to keep in mind, if you decide to work with a carrier that has multiple trucks and they have a accounting system and all that good stuff, they may ask for net 30. You got to decide if you're willing to accept net 30 based on the potential and the opportunity that they're giving you. But I would recommend, nothing against the 1 and 2 man shows, but I do recommend the ones that have 1 truck, 2 trucks, invoice them on a Friday or a Monday. Do net 7 or net 0, because if that truck breaks down, and again, I did tell y'all I was honest. I was gonna tell you the good and the bad. But if that driver, those 1 and 2 man shows, if their trucks break down, they gonna make a decision between paying you or paying for their truck to get fixed. They're asking you to understand and still continue to book them loads when their trucks get back up and running. So again, just think about $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So I would recommend that thought process when creating your dispatching company and setting your terms. Any other questions? If not, we're going to talk about freight dispatcher requirements. So requirements as a freight dispatcher, I talked about a little earlier. Determine if you want to be independent or work for a company. If you work for a company, You're gonna have to go by their rules and their process and their regulations. If you want to be independent, that is when you would set your company up and follow your state guidelines. To tell you what the requirements are for independent dispatchers is what we're going to focus on. It does require business setup according to your state laws. You need to determine your business name. So those that know me, I'm going to stop right here. Those that know me know I am passionate about your business name. Very passionate about that. I don't have a problem with people that want to set their business names up as Blessed Hands Transportation, Glory Transportation, Glory Logistics, or none of that. I'm glad you all love the Lord. I do too. But if you're setting your business up to grow to that next level, you're setting your business up to be able to pass stuff off to your kids, you want to set something that you look back on 20 years from now and say, that's a wonderful name. And you want to set something up that can scale. For those that want to use their business to get into government contracting, I'm not going to go too deep into government contracting, but you do have to have a business to get a government contract, right? And as having a business, those contracting officers look at your name. You just think about what they would want to do business with and the type name. Think of businesses names that can scale and be universal as well. So I'm very passionate about that because I see a lot of things come across and I'm like, I can pick and tell the criteria, the background of that business. Your name is almost your resume. Just keep that in mind. Your name is your first impression when someone wants to do business with you. I do business with several companies and I'm like, you will still be where you are 10 years from now, unless you're gonna adjust that name. So while we love to see True Kings Trucking and Big Kings Trucking and all that good stuff, you're gonna have to put in a lot of work with those names if you don't choose something universal to help you scale. So I'm just, like I said, you can pick and choose whatever you want, but that is my advice because I'm passionate about that. And I've seen so many people get denied on different things because of their business name. And the next thing is check, once you pick a name, check the domain availability to secure your business name. Why is that very important? That's very important for branding. I will tell you why. Because a lot of brokerages, because dispatchers, you're going to be working with brokers. A lot of times brokers can look at your business name and tell if you're a one-man show, two-man show, and they could tell if you're small or big, and they'll use that against you to lowball you with rates for your drivers. We are a brokerage company, and for different lines of businesses, we have to have different thought processes, right? So on our brokerage side, we think a little different than our trucking side. But when we see those names come across at Gmail, at Yahoo versus at SJW Trucking or SJW Logistics, you see the difference in the name? Here, when I said at Gmail, at Yahoo, when we see those come across, we automatically know they must be a small company. They probably gonna be desperate for this load. So let me see if I can get them to take it for $800. As a dispatcher, you're gonna have your driver saying, I'm not taking that load for less than 1,000. In your mind, you're gonna be grateful for the opportunity and like, well, I don't see the problem with $800. Again, the more professional you sound, it makes a difference in the conversations and negotiating the rate. So check the domain availability. Every time you buy the domain, it comes with the email address that you can use, even if it's just a forwarding address, to forward to your at Gmail, your at Yahoo, where you can send out emails from that to look professional. Your goal, you want to look professional and as big as possible. So that way you can get the business and have people to work with you, because I'm always on growing and scaling your company. Any questions about that? Because I know that was a lot. Any questions? If not, we'll go on to opening a business bank account. Some of these things, I don't recommend you start up front because I know opening a business bank account, it does require you to pay a deposit. I would not open my business bank account until I have secured a carrier. Or if I have to do transactions from it and I want to keep it all in a business name, then I will open a business bank account. You need an email, a phone, and computer. The computer, like I say, that's for when you are going to get into doing dispatching on a bigger scale. If you want to start out with just your phone or a tablet, you can start your business with dispatching for that. Again, dispatching doesn't require a whole lot to get started. And then, you know, having a website and logo, that's optional. You don't have to have a website to list your business on Google. So that's up to you to how big and how far you want to go coming out the box. That would be up to you. Any questions on that? I have another page of requirements before we move on to the second page. Okay. And then continuing the independent dispatcher requirements. So I always like to tell people those are the legal requirements that you have to have, but these are the people, interpersonal requirements that you need to have to be a dispatcher. You need to have strong communication skills. You need to have strong interpersonal skills, negotiation skills, ability to pay attention to detail. You must be organized and you must have patience, and more patience. So now I'm going to pick on some people that said they had spouses or significant others doing the trucking business and they want to learn dispatching. Do you all understand why I am saying you need to have patience? Have you ever called and talked to your driver and asked how their day is going and you get a story you didn't want to hear? Can I get some of that feedback? Because we call, you got to think about it. Drivers are sitting in a truck of some sort all day long.
Yes.
Tell me about it, Tamika. Tell me about those experiences. You just called and say, hey, I got this load for you. You get a whole different story than what you expected.
Either they done had a flat, done had to sit out on the road, wait for a truck, the repairman to come. It's 2 to 3 hours. They ready to get home. They done ran out of time. Something done got in the way when they're trying to do something. They ready to get out this truck when they make it home. It's just, yeah, it's a lot. Patience, patience, and patience.
Yes. So very important. That's probably one of the best skills you can have. And thank you for that, Tamika. But that's one of the best skills you can have. Again, these drivers sitting in these trucks, you don't know what they're going through with picking up and delivering. Shippers, receivers are rude to them. They may have had to wait a long time. And one thing you'll learn as a dispatcher, they're on e-logs, which are electronic logs, most of them. So they can't adjust their clock. So if they run out of time, as Tamika said, they may have to stay overnight at that place. You may run into canceling a load. So sometimes you may not be able to listen too long, but sometimes just being a listening ear for a driver can go a long way, because as a dispatcher, drivers and carriers are looking for people they can trust. Very, very important. If they have your trust, you can go a long way with that company. So you're going to need that. You may pick up the phone and call your carrier driver, and all you wanted to know was, hey, what's your ETA to go pick up this load? And you may get a story that you did not want to hear. Listen and say, okay, I'm so sorry to hear that you're going through that. Can you tell me the ETA to that destination though? You got to keep it moving. You know, everybody goes through something, but they're in a different arena when it comes to the trucking. They have people drive and try to cut them off, you know, just little things that irritate them, that they don't get a chance to sit back at a desk and go to the restroom when they want to, or go grab some water when they need to, because they're driving. So again, to be a great dispatcher, you must have patience, patience and more patience. And then, like I say, the paying attention to detail. A lot of times when you book loads, you're going to send that load to that driver. The only two things they're really going to look at or three, they're going to look at their rate, they're going to look at where they're picking up at, and where they're delivering to. One thing you need to be aware of as a dispatcher is being able to communicate if there are any special requirements, i.e. this may be, I'm not going to get too far in it, but it may be a blind shipment. That driver needs to know that's a blind shipment before he gets there. So just in case he doesn't read it, shoot that driver a text or pick up the phone and call them and say, please pay attention to this rate con because it's a blind shipment. The paperwork you picking up is not going to be the same paperwork you use when you deliver. So just keep those kind of things in mind, that you need to be able to pay attention to detail, because that can make a difference in that driver making some money or losing some money, I should say, if they don't know those little small details about the loads. Not all loads have them, but there are some that have some unique requirements. Just before we move on. Okay, gonna move on to out of the requirements, and then we're gonna talk about something else that's very important to know as a dispatcher. You want to definitely dive deep into understanding these terms, and that is a carrier versus a truck driver. So a carrier is a person that is could be a truck driver as well, but they have multiple trucks up under their motor carrier authority. And a motor carrier authority, most people know it as MC number. What's your MC and DOT number? That's probably the most familiar to people what they hear, but MC stands for motor carrier. Everybody, whether they're an independent truck driver or they have multiple trucks, have a MC number. So you just want to know the difference between a carrier, because some people say, are you a carrier or you're an owner operator? And an owner operator is a truck driver that earns a living by driving a truck, and they own the truck. Doesn't matter whether they're leasing it or they're financing it, they own the truck, or they're acting as they own the truck. That's the owner operator. So very important to know the difference between those two. Most of you, if you're starting a dispatching company, I would recommend targeting owner operators, because those are the ones that are like the one-man show. They're going to be trying to drive and make a living, as well as look at load boards while they're driving or while they're sitting at shippers and receivers trying to find their next load. So sometimes it's easier to get contracts with owner operators versus carriers, because like you said, carriers, those most of the time have more than one truck, 2 or 3 trucks, and they may have their own internal dispatching, or they may use an external dispatching company, but it's easier to get owner operators to find, to start your dispatching company with. The other thing is knowing the difference between a broker versus a broker and agent. Very important to know both, because they both are going to be your bread and butter. A broker is a person that carries the license for the company. So they're the ones that hold the contracts, and they arrange the transportation for the motor carrier or the owner operator. So brokers are very important. They're going to be the ones that you want to partner with. I will tell you, because I'm an honest person, brokers, they do frown at dispatchers. They do frown at dispatching companies. I know they have a protest going on against dispatching companies. They want FMCSA to put some rules and guidelines in place for dispatchers, because a dispatcher is a third-party person, and you are a middleman between the broker and the carrier. A lot of brokers prefer to work directly with the carrier, and a lot of carriers do not want to work with the brokers. So that's why dispatchers are very much so needed. But there are some brokers who love working with dispatchers, because a lot of times dispatchers have a better network than brokers do. So just don't, I tell all people, if you meet a broker, that broker, you call them and you say, hey, I want to book this load. And they say, you say I'm a dispatcher. Say, oh, I don't work with dispatching companies. They hang up on you. That's a very real scenario. They will do that. Don't work, call back. They want that load moved, call back. Whether you're a dispatcher or not, I have a carrier that can move that load if you talk to me. You have to be persistent as well. So that's one thing that I tell everybody. There is a fear sometimes. Sometimes there's intimidation with brokers. At the end of the day, they don't get paid if that load is not picked up and delivered. So it's in their best interest to work with a dispatching company sometimes. And broker and agents, I call them more like the broker's assistant or so, because they don't have to have a license, but they can work under a broker. It's almost, I give the scenario with a barbershop. You can have a master barber and you can have other people come in and cut hair, but they don't have to have license because they're all working up under that master barber's license. Brokering is the same way. You can work as a broker and agent under a licensed broker. So I do advise everyone to learn trucking terms. There are several different trucking terms out there as a dispatcher. One thing means this, they say it two different ways, but it means the same thing. Potato, potato. It's a potato, okay? They'll say, I need your BOL, I need your proof of delivery. Most of the time, a proof of delivery is a BOL. It's the same thing. But that's something very important to learn as a dispatcher, because those are some common terms that you're going to hear as a dispatcher. Any questions so far?
No questions.
And then we're going to get into, as we're getting close to the end here, one thing you need to know as a dispatcher, when starting out as a dispatcher, is learn your equipment types. I can tell you the quickest way to end a call with me. I have plenty of people call me, and God knows I will help anybody. That's my nature, that's my spirit. But the quickest way to end the call with me is say, hey, I'm looking to get into the trucking industry and I want to know, how do I get started? I will tell you, you could get started by hanging up the phone with me and going to YouTube. I do that, and I'm not being mean or anything like that, but so many people are thinking getting into the trucking industry, or they're hearing people making a lot of money in the trucking industry, which is true in some cases, but do some research, people. Do your research, learn the different equipment types. If you want to get started into dispatching, decide what you want to dispatch. It's so much out there. You can start big or small. For example, you have your dry van and reefers, but do you want to dispatch box trucks that have regular dry van and reefers, or do you want to dispatch semi-truck? Whichever one you decide, or both. You need to know the different sizes. There are 22-foot box trucks. There are 24-foot box trucks. There are 28-foot box trucks. There are 53-foot dry vans, 53-foot reefers. There are 48-foot. Did you all just hear about the different sizes I called out that you need to know as a dispatcher? Again, learn the equipment types. That is so important, because you don't want to get online trying to book a load for a flatbed, and then you don't know if it's a low boy step deck, 48-foot, 53-foot gooseneck. You don't know. So when that broker is talking to you and they say, what size trailer do they have? Is it air ride? You know, do they have tarps? If it's a flatbed, what size are the tarps? Those are things that you're gonna need to know. So always get all the details, educate yourself on what you want to do. I put the most common ones up here that people do, which is dry van, reefer, containers, and flatbeds. Like I said, those are the top ones that people dispatch for. There are other types of equipment you could dispatch for. And with containers are very popular. right now. Due to all the supply chain shortages, the ports across the US are on the news at least once a week, if not every other week, about how many ships are sitting at sea and whether we're going to have a Christmas or whether we're going to have parts in stock and all that good stuff. So again, learn, how containers, people don't realize containers can be booked with dually trucks as well as semi trucks. So what the chassis requirements, most containers are overweight. What type of overweight permits you need. So again, very important to learn these type things if you're interested in becoming a dispatcher. After you get your company set up and all that good stuff, definitely educate yourself on these. Take a class to learn them if you need to. Do your research on it because it's very, very, very important. You cannot get around this knowledge to be able to successfully you cannot get around without having this knowledge to be able to successfully book a load. It's needed, it's required to do as well. Any questions about that?
So where would you, let's just say if you want to, like you said, educate yourself. I know you have YouTube and I know you mentioned that you can go to a class. Like where can you find a class that will educate you on that?
Well, great question. We do have a 5-day dispatch challenge coming up next week from September the 12th through the 16th at 3 o'clock. Well, we get into these different equipment types, but you can also go online and Google dispatching classes. Any dispatch class you take should teach you the different equipment types and why you need to know those equipment types. We do a deep dive into those in our class as well. But that's very important to know because again, when you go to book a load on a load board, it's going to ask for the equipment type to be able to know what loads are available based on that equipment type.
I didn't know a dually can actually pull a container. I thought it was only, your semis.
Nope. I seen a dually back up to my dock with a, I guess it was a low boy trailer on it, but it was dock height. And we unloaded that container sitting on top of that and dually, yes. So how many other people, did any other people know that? Or did you all think that only semi trucks could haul containers? And Latonya put this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I knew the dually can do that because we actually pulled our box truck with the dually.
See, y'all will be surprised what those dualies can do. And I'm not sure if all dualies require CDLs. I don't know if they require CDLs or not.
It's the trailer, whatever the trailer you pulling. The weight of the dually plus the trailer, it depends on whether or not you need CDLs when you're driving it.
Did y'all hear Shayna giving y'all that knowledge?
Yeah,
but
that's
if
true.
you get a truck with just the 2 tires on the back, like a regular truck you can haul, you don't have to have CDLs when you have your trailer. That doesn't matter.
Did y'all hear that good knowledge? And you could dispatch for them. Great knowledge. So we do, on my team, we only have semi trucks. So like I say, it was a shocker to me. I learned stuff every day. When they pulled up in the back of our warehouse, I was like, oh, how are we gonna unload that? Is that gonna be dock height? It was dock height. We rolled that forklift on there and rolled it back off. So, and my dock worker said they actually liked unloading it on the dually truck than they did on the semi truck better. So I learned that as well. Latonya also put the link to the 5-day challenge in the chat in case anybody wants to start up for our 5-day challenge next week. Again, it's September the 12th through the 13th. I'm sorry, 12th through the 16th, and it's going to be at 3 o'clock every day. It's going to be recorded. You will get back office access where you can watch the recordings. I do give homework in there, as well as we have drivers come on. We have carriers come on. We do live role playing. We actually book load doing the class as well, so you can get a feel for it. Because my biggest goal when coming out of the class is to eliminate the fear and let people know you can do this. Don't worry about it. If it's a lot of people like to say, oh, it's a male dominated industry. Don't worry about that. Those men need help too. So we learn all of that in the class. And as we're getting up to the end of this webinar, this is what I'm going to email out to everyone. It's a free bonus, a quick guide to starting your dispatching services. It talks a little bit more about what all you would need to start your dispatching service and getting set up. So I'm going to send that out to everyone so they can get started with their dispatching business, whether you're going to be an agent, work independently, or set up your own company. A lot of the supply, you will need the same thing there as well. So you all will get this in via email, so check your emails a little later today. And we're at the end. Are there any final questions for me? And